Hello and welcome back to the Alfie Whattam podcast. As always, we are brought to you by Alpha Technology Recruitment. If you're looking to hire software engineers in the UK, please go to welovealpha.com to hire the best engineers on the market. Link will be in the description wherever you're watching this. Today we're talking about hiring software engineers, hiring culture, progression, job searching, ED&I, and so on and so forth. Today in the studio, I have Adam Bolton, who's the head of talent at Currency Cloud, owned by Visa. We've got Vicky Lee, who is the engineering manager for Grafana Labs, and Artem Rashev, who is the head of engineering for Menai Financial Group, who's ex-Revolut and ex-Deloitte as well. Adam's been on the podcast before. This is in many ways almost like a part two to Adam's previous episode where we were discussing recruiting, job searching, etc. for software engineers and other tech professionals. We had a great conversation. Adam Bolton with I think it's Adam Dickinson over at Metro. I think it was Vish as well was on that one. Wanted to do a follow-up, but with more technical engineering leaders as opposed to being just a recruitment for recruiters kind of focused episode. So keen to continue that in today's session. So thank you all for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Cool. Good to have you back, man. Good to have you two on the pod for the first time. Cool. So as we're recording this episode, we are soon heading into the new year. It's going to happen pretty quickly in a couple of weeks, right? So this is when a lot of work gets a little bit quieter over Christmas and people start planning and thinking about their hiring agenda for the next year ahead. They start strategizing, they start speaking to hiring managers, they start working out which jobs are the priority, which ones they need to start recruiting for, and so on and so forth. So we have a lot of recruiters that watch the show. We have a lot of engineering leaders and people that run software development teams. And you all, in some capacity, are involved in hiring developers, whether that's reviewing CVs, interviewing, helping out build your teams, other teams, and so on and so forth. You've all been in teams before where those teams have grown and you've had to obviously apply for those jobs. So if we start with advice for, I suppose, hiring managers, whether that's a CTO, whether that's a HR specialist, whether that's a team lead in a development unit looking to build out their team, what advice would you all give to those individuals that are looking to grow their teams, I suppose, as we head into the new year? Adam, do you want to kick us off, mate? What
Sure.
would be kind of your thoughts in this area?
I think one of the main things that I've noticed in the last months is that people seem to think that the hiring landscape is easy now because certain companies are making layoffs.
Yeah.
It's not. It's still very much a candidate-driven market. Just because the likes of Facebook or Twitter and all those kind of companies are making these news headline layoffs, the market is still very challenging. Yeah. There still is like this war on talent. That we need to find these people. So just because there are headlines going around, it doesn't mean that it's easier. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're going to get this pipeline of 10x engineers. Yeah. We still need to reach out. We still need to get people. In fact, it makes things harder because on the flip side, that other people are sitting there thinking, I'm comfortable where I am, and I don't need to move. So it makes it more and more difficult. So yeah, I think what I would say is don't take it as gospel, I suppose, that you're going to just have like loads of great candidates coming through. So
for you, it's a mindset thing, still appreciating the talent and that it's hard to find as opposed to just treating them like a number because, the perception is that there's so many of them. But in reality, and I can back this up, we produced a list when the layoffs were happening of people at Twitter, people at Meta, people at Snapchat that were made redundant. And we sent this list to thousands of hiring managers for free and said, look, if you're looking to hire, call these guys, check them out, no fees needed. And the number one email I got back was, hi Alfie, I've called everybody and everybody's already found a job. So it's for the first week or two it probably was a little bit of chaos. I was a little bit worried, but now it's got to a point where it's just as hard to find a good developer than it was a few months back.
Yeah.
What do you think, Vicky? What's your perception on on advice, I suppose, for people that are looking to grow their teams as we head into the new year?
I think the most important thing is for hiring managers to really understand what they're looking for. And I've seen a lot of kind of interviews or interview rounds where they're so long as well. And because the market is competitive, I think you really need to make sure as well that you just know what shape of a person you're looking for. So you're not, just having them wait as well on for a decision, because they're not going to wait for you, really. They have so many other options there. And yeah, I think it's just, at least in Grafana, it's a lot easier for us to hire because, we're global as well. And although a few people, they don't really want to work fully remote as well. So it can be challenging if they're looking for a specific office, but we do offer also like a co-working like stipend every month. But yeah, I think a lot of hiring managers as well should just make sure to really expand their network, because referrals are really good. But at the end of the day, referrals end up, being kind of the same people because it's just people that So just really
friends.
making sure, to expand this. And then that really helps with diversity as well, because traditionally when startups, are created, it's probably going to be a white man who has money to start it, and then they will reach out to their network and they will probably know other white men as well. And then when you have a company that's full of kind of the same kind of people, it's then difficult to get someone kind of a bit different in as well, because people don't want to be the first person that's different from everyone else as well. So that's kind of my initial advice.
No, you're absolutely right. Startups are often founded around the founder, right? And they're the brand, and then they hire in their image, and that becomes a replicating thing which happens throughout the company. I agree massively with what you said about interview speed there a second ago. We did a survey for a report that we released called How to Hire Software Developers, and we found that 90% plus, I think it was, of engineers will lose massive interest in a company if it takes more than 3 interview stages for them to make a decision. They were saying, look, these guys aren't moving quickly. Other companies are. They're showing that they're interested in me. So why would I wait around for a company which is taking its time, basically?
Yeah, and I think something to keep in mind as well is you need to be you need to understand that people have their own personal lives as well, because sometimes there's rounds where you have loads of technical take-home tasks, and if someone has a family, you can't expect them to take so many hours out of the day, especially if they're kind of comfortable in their current role and they're not specifically looking to move as well. So personally, what I like doing is giving people the opportunity, because everyone is different, to interview in different ways. Like, if they want to interview like with a live coding challenge, then they'll be good to offer that to them. If they prefer a take-home tech task, because some people do prefer that and they don't like someone watching them, then it would be good to also offer them that option. But then if you start having too many options, then it can lead to inconsistency as well with the interviewing. So it is really difficult. But I think keeping in mind, kind of that people are different as well, and not everyone works the same way, and not everyone kind of, has that time as well. I think that, you should do that.
Absolutely. I've got some clients who do tests, and they are built for graduates, and you have senior developers complete them and fail at them, but they are 10 times more qualified for the job. But the test was a generic one off Google.
I mean, to be honest, I do think that seniors won't be doing as well as juniors in these actual coding challenges sometimes, because seniors tend to move away from the code, and they do more mentorship as well. So I can totally see that.
Of course. Okay. What do you think Artem, about this whole subject?
Well, honestly, that's quite tough. Like, to give advice to another hiring manager, like what to look at. But I bet don't hire people you don't click with. I mean, like, hire not colleagues, but like teammates. Like, you're just talking on the interview, and it's not just about like tests or like hard skills, but you're just like, the person is asking what you're doing, like, and he's then asking like why, like how do you benefit from it, like what's the use case, like how do you earn from it, like that, like commerciality type of mind. And then this person is like, well, I could probably help you this way, that way, and like you understand that this is the guy you can like basically rely on. You could pass him some like responsibilities, and that guy would be amazing in his job. So that's probably like that's the advice I would bet on.
Yeah, no, that's certainly valid, mate. It's not just about hiring somebody with the right technical skills. It's can you click with them? Have they got the attitude? Have they got the other areas as well? I mean, you can train skill, but you can't train attitude. You need to hire for that, right? And get people that are willing to be bought into that culture, long term. And I think that's a really great segue onto the topic of culture, because let's say people listening to this have followed the advice, they've done quick interviews, they've not messed people around, they've given people options in terms of how they would like to do the interviews. They've got some great engineers in the team. One thing that a lot of people have problems with is retention, and it's turnover. And it's great engineers that join and then they leave after what's like the average tenure for a developer, like a year, 18 months or something max, right? So building culture, building that stickiness and reducing that turnover and retention are obviously just as critical, if not even more critical than the hiring itself. So if we go around again, what would be your advice to leaders, perhaps first-time leaders or whoever that are trying to build that culture? People are leaving, they want to reduce the turnover. What would be your thoughts, your recommendations, and your ideas in this area? Vicky, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I think some companies place a lot of emphasis, on like exit interviews. But I think really you should start earlier and, have like stay interviews to really figure out why people want to stay in the company. And I think, culture fit is, it's okay to look for in an interview, but that will end up having the same kind of people again. So something that I prefer to look at is, culture add, like how can we, because culture, it's going to change no matter what, like especially as you scale, it's impossible to, keep it the same, especially when you have startups as well. So I think as long as you look at, kind of the attitude as well of people, then you can see how they can help grow the culture in a positive way.
I like that, culture add over culture fit. That's probably a better way of looking at it, isn't it? Culture is such a mysterious word. Like, what does it actually mean?
Yeah, and like you were saying about the retention of engineers as well, I think it's important for us to know that engineers like to be challenged. So if they do want to move within the organization, then you should kind of make it happen, because like you can't make engineers stay if they just don't want to do the work.
Yeah, it's if you don't give them that opportunity, somebody else will. Yeah, and you'll lose them. What do you think, Artem, on this subject?
Well, I fully agree with Vicky, and to refer to the previous point, like your colleagues, like they're regular people, they got their lives, and like you as an engineer manager, like you should help them grow not only at work, but basically like you should have regular one-to-ones and just ask what are you looking for? Like, what's your next step? Like, how can I help you, like, achieve this next step? Probably someone has got some, like, problems at home, and, like, it's not, like, you should just give, like, a fresh breath of air, like, to this person. Or probably someone is, like, I've got some time, I want to devote it to work, I want to work, like, longer hours, but I want to reach this particular goal by, for example, this time.
Yeah.
So, like, that's just asking, like, talking to people, asking, like, what's happening? Like that.
Yeah. It blows me away how many people don't have like promotion targets. They don't have something that they're working towards, and because of that, if you don't have a goal, it's hard to score. Yeah. And it's a terrible cliche, but it's true. What's your view, Adam, on retention?
I think for me, there's two things that we've been doing, and I agree with all the points that everyone else has made. Yeah. But we've implemented a onboarding tool called Onboarder.
Okay.
And what that's enabling us to do is really cliched, but it's like close the loop on the hires. So what we're doing is we kind of it automates a lot of the onboarding process to the point where we then look at how successful has somebody been and what has contributed to that success, to loop that back into the hiring process.
Okay.
So it's looking at like what are the successful factors for people and what keeps them at Currency Cloud for longer.
Sure.
And trying to replicate that into the interviewing process. But also, I think diversity in the pipeline as well, which comes back to Vicky's point on the previous question. Otherwise you end up with loads of middle-aged white men doing the same job, hiring in the same in the image of themselves, kind of thing. So making that diversity be there, so that you've got a diverse panel of people that you're working with, and like setting the goals, setting things that people like doing. I know personally, if there's a project that I or one of my colleagues are working on, there's something you genuinely really care about, you're going to do a better job, right? And you're going to progress on that, because you can see your career progression. Like I've got a guy in my team who just loves data.
Okay.
Right? He lives in Excel, like, so much so that we even bought him like a an Excel T-shirt for his birthday and stuff like that, right? It's like a team joke. But he's really good with it, and he's really improved the work that we do, and he enjoys that stuff. So I think push people, or not push people, support people to do the things they enjoy, and you'll get longevity out of it. And we track. I used to call it stickiness.
Okay.
We track the stickiness of those hires through 12, 18, and 24 months, and try and target ourselves to keep. I think we're trying to look at 24 months, 75% of our hires, to try and keep that and work out where we've gone wrong.
That would be a massively above average standard if you got to that, so that'd be wicked. But I love what you said, making data-driven decisions, and diversity obviously being just as important there. I had Joe Peterson on the podcast recently. He's the CTO of Banked, a really cool fintech company, and that was his number one advice really for people looking to build teams. And he's built massive teams, and he said, it's all about not having a team full of middle-aged white guys. That's basically what he said. And the minute that you start getting diversity of thought and diversity of background, you get diversity of opinions. And at the end of the day, whatever product that you're developing, it's not targeted for a specific like it's got to be for a white person between 25 to 45. It's most of the time the customers are anyone, right? Or any type of person. So having different types of people working on that product will allow it to appeal to different markets as well. So it makes sense from a business perspective as well, not just an ethical one. Okay, let's talk about flexibility and remote working, because that's such an important part of building cultures into kind of today's world after COVID. So what are your thoughts on remote working, on remote versus in the office versus hybrid? I know this is a controversial topic, so you might have different views, and that's cool. What do you think, Adam? Do you prefer in the office? Do you prefer hybrid? Do you prefer at home? What's your view?
I may probably stand out from the majority, but I prefer office work.
Okay.
I mean, people eventually how it all evolved. People like sitting together and well, why don't we invent nice place when no one distracts you?
Sure.
There is some snacks in the kitchen, cool water, really nice desk, with good monitors, etc. And where your colleagues are just sitting next to you and you can talk to them. There's no need to organize a chat, etc. And that's basically the reason why I prefer office.
Yeah.
I've spent 2 years during the COVID working from home, and it hit me honestly.
Yeah.
When I went back to office, that was such a pleasure. But at the same time, I do value when, for example, there is one day when you want to stay at home.
Sure.
You can just work from home the same way, but you want to do something else like that. And that's extremely convenient. And that's must work from office? No. Work from office and can work from home 1 or 2 days per week. Perfectly fine.
Yeah. So you're more. I'm the same opinion, man. I prefer an office personally, just because I can get more done. But I believe hybrid is the way forward, and people should have the choice. So I'd definitely back you on that one. What do you think, Adam?
I sit in the middle.
Okay.
So I live somewhere that is literally a 20-minute drive round trip to get a glass of milk, right?
Oh wow.
Okay. So when I'm remote, I am remote.
Yeah.
I like the balance of hybrid. So for me, I enjoy going to the office. So I currently work between I actually got my things around my neck still, my Visa and Currency Cloud, right? So we were acquired by Visa. So I do some time in the Visa office, sometimes in the Currency Cloud office, and sometimes working from home. So I like the interactions in person, as you mentioned, it's the water cooler chats, right? Or they're just sitting next to someone and saying, oh, by the way, how do you do this, or how are you getting on with that? And those kind of things, I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I like the normality of jumping off the train and getting my Cafe Nero, heading to the office with my coffee in hand. I miss that. I like that part of things, but I also like working from home in that my commute is 15 steps.
Yeah.
I get more done. I get a lot of stuff done. I can block out time. I've got no distractions. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for the sort of hybrid model myself.
Okay, cool. And your thoughts, Vicky?
I think you managed to pick a great panel today, because we're all, in the different kind of spectrum. So I really prefer working fully remote.
Yes.
One of the reasons why I decided to join Grafana was because it was fully remote. And the reason for that was because during COVID, I think I had the opposite. Realization. I just really loved it. I do think you need to be super disciplined if you're remote working, because you handle your own time. as well. And it's so easy to be distracted by things. And especially, if you're married or if, you have any family, I think sometimes they don't really realize that you're working from home. They'll be like, oh, yeah, do you want to like come, to the shop with me? It's like, no, I have to work,
My wife used to do that at the start. Like, oh, let's just pop out to the shops. I'm like, oh, I'm working.
Yeah.
My wife still does it. I mean, to this day.
But I prefer the flexibility. I live in southeast London with the Elizabeth line. It's been great going into central, but still, I used to wake up at 6 o'clock to get the Thames Link to Farringdon. And I used to try to avoid rush hour. So I'd used to get into the office, before 8 then. And then I'd have to leave the office at maybe 4 o'clock to avoid rush hour. And I just think it's really great having the 2 hours back because, I mean, I put myself first when it comes to, like kind of working as well because, I mean, I think it's great, but at the end of the day, the job is just a job, and I want to put like my personal time first. I want to spend time with my wife as well. And having the 2 hours back every day is really great. And also we order a lot from Amazon, so it's great. It's great now that they don't have to bother our neighbor anymore with delivering our parcels. But when it comes to going back to like hiring as well, I think it's been so much easier for us to hire with us being fully remote because like a lot of people don't like working in the office as well, but then also we can expand again our network. The hybrid model, I think, is very important that like companies or organizations that set it up make sure that it's actually hybrid because there's loads of places where they say it's hybrid, but you have to work, you have to be in the office like 4 days a week, and then maybe you don't even have things set up correctly with remote working because personally I find it really hard to work with people who are in the office and some are remote working just because it's really hard, right, to get a meeting room. It's hard to get a meeting room, so there's always like FOMO going on, if people aren't in the office as well.
I find with that, it's hard because you want to do a in-person meeting and you've got somebody on a Teams call on a laptop in the table and it sucks. It's like, it's not the same. Having days where everyone goes in together is kind of what works for me. What were you going to say?
I was just say we're quite well set up in that each of our meeting rooms has like, you just press the button in the middle of the room and the people come up on the screen. Yeah. Where it's, I think it's difficult is when you're the only one that's on a screen and everyone else is in person because they sit and you just naturally do it like you turn around to the person next to you and just like whisper something because it's relevant but not massively relevant, so it's like if there's somebody that's not there, we do what you said, we get together at certain times, like we say today we've all come to the office today for example, so everyone's there, but it's difficult when there's just like one person up on a screen and you feel I've been that person and you feel like you're sort of not engaged enough, whereas when everybody's on a hangout, we've got informally we just press the like hands up button. If you've got a quick question, it pings and everyone goes, yep. What when you're in person, you almost feel like a couple of times here I've almost gone to put my hand up to say like I want to say something, but I do find that a little bit frustrating. But
one interesting thing there is that we all agree that if you're hiring developers, you need to offer flexibility because if you're purely trying to get people in the office, good luck. Like unless you're Elon building Twitter and you've got like a people bought into that vision, it's difficult. And even he had challenges doing that. Loads of people resigned. Thousands of people quit over him making in the office every day a requirement. Okay, if we flip this to the candidate's point of view, we've talked about how to hire and keep and maintain the best developers. Let's talk about job searching, I suppose, for a few minutes. So if you're a candidate looking for an opportunity, step one is usually to write a CV and to get something nice out there that you can start sending out there to try and get interviews. So if we just talk about CV tips for a few minutes, what would kind of be your like number one piece of advice for an engineer, which is writing a resume and trying to use that to get interviews? If we start with yourself, Artem, what would be your biggest piece of advice there?
Use templates.
Okay.
I mean, there are already like predefined template styles. Like which allow you to structure your CV. And bother with the cover letter. That's probably I mean that's not part of the CV itself, but that's like I feel like that's part of the papers that you need to submit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
For that piece.
Templates it's a good piece of advice. I mean, there's so many people that I see write CVs and it's all over the place. So if they can go and get a model which works and which is proven to work, and they can replicate that and enter their data, and there's so many free sites that do this, and yeah, that's certainly a no-brainer, mate.
That's easier for the like interviewers like to check
Yeah.
like what's there, and I feel like consistency is the key. Like if your CV is clean, consistent, like structured, I mean that already says what type of person you are.
It blows me away how many times I read like a software tester's CV who are supposed to be great at attention to detail, and there's like spelling mistakes everywhere, the formatting's all wrong. It's like you're not going to be a great tester if you can't get the resume part right. Okay, but what do you think, Vicky, on CV tips? What would be your biggest piece of advice?
I don't have a strong opinion on CVs, to be honest. I am a lot more lenient with CVs, I think. Like I have had co-workers, point out to me saying, "Oh, this CV has, spelling mistakes."
Sure.
So they were like, "Oh, let's not, put them through all because we want someone who has, that kind of attention to detail." For me, I guess I don't really care so much because I don't know, like why they have spelling mistakes. Is it because English isn't their first language and they're still learning, or do they have dyslexia as well? And I have co-workers who say, "Oh, but then they can use tools as well for this." And I'm like, but I don't really know their personal situation, so yeah, like who am I to judge? So honestly, I'm super lenient on CVs as long as it's got clear information on kind of what tech stack they've worked with. Something that I personally would like to see is kind of location, because sometimes it's not very clear from just their profile, and sometimes they don't even have a CV and it's just a LinkedIn profile, which is fine. But then if the LinkedIn profile doesn't have anything either, it makes it super difficult to kind of screen.
I like what you mentioned around the tech stack, because that's an obvious one, because so many people will list 100 technologies on their CV, but you don't know what type of developer that they are. Just having a one-liner at the top where you're a Java developer specializing in AWS, microservices in fintech. I mean, if you had that sums up your profile. But if you've got 100 technologies and there's no ranking, there's no ordering when you've used them, where you've used them, how long you've used them for, if you're advanced or a beginner, then it's just hard for people to recognize if it's worth having an interview, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, that does remind me. Something that does bug me, but it just bugs me personally, is if you have someone who's a junior and it says that they're an expert in a specific language, it's like, I'm not sure I fully, kind of agree with that. But
hurting themselves. I see graduates who have CTO as their most recent job title because they had a side project, and they don't realize that a lot of people reading the CV, reading it for 5 seconds before deciding to put it through to the hiring manager or not, they're rejecting it because they're thinking, "Oh, this is way more experience for a junior developer role," but they just don't realize they're hurting themselves. You're obviously the king of CVs, Adam. You probably reviewed thousands in your lifetime.
Yeah,
mate.
probably tens, hundreds of thousands. I don't know, a lot. I know you wouldn't think it to look at me, but I've been in recruitment for 20 years, nearly. So, I've got a lot of experience. I think I mentioned this on the previous podcast we did.
Yeah.
A lot of recruiters read CVs bottom up. And when I said that, everyone agreed with me, like, "Oh, yeah, we all do that." And I asked everyone in my team, I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Like, we read from the bottom up to the top to get an understanding. Like, you read the top lines, what you mentioned there, like, are you a Java, I'm a Java dev, microservices, whatever. You read that bit, and then you go to the bottom and start building the career from the bottom. So it's certainly important to make sure that it reads well.
Yes.
One of my pet hates is copy paste. So when there's 6 bullet points, and in the last 6 jobs, those 6 bullet points are exactly the same. Okay, you might have done similar work, but it's not exactly the same. So getting that across is, I think, is really important. And then, the formatting. I agree with Vicky there as well on the like spelling mistakes. It might not be someone's English, might not be their first language. There might be neurodiverse. So like my daughter's autistic, and she is like just a fountain of knowledge in things that she cares about.
Sure.
The rest of the stuff doesn't care.
Yes.
Right? Doesn't matter to her. She doesn't care about it. So it's like, lots of people that are neurodiverse are absolutely amazing at some of the stuff they do. With engineers, I love to see like a GitHub link.
Yeah, me too.
A Stack Overflow link, something like that you can hand to it. I mean, I can't read it, but I can give it to a hiring manager and say, hey, what do you think of the code in this repo? I've tried to learn how to code a few times, and I'm useless at it. So, it's putting that relevant information onto the CV.
Yeah, that's well said. Okay, so we've got everyone listening. They've got amazing CVs now. They're templated. They're short. They got all the tech skills on there. Everything's relevant. It's a great story. Hey, I'm interrupting this podcast really quickly to let you know about an exclusive promotion we are running now at Alpha Technology Recruitment. If you're looking to hire software engineers in the UK, then drop us an email right away and mention code podcast in the message. This will give you a special discount on all of your recruitment fees and allow you to scale your software engineering team much faster. Visit welovealpha.com for details. Link is in the description. Let's say they get an interview, right? Let's do the same thing, but number one piece of advice for actually doing the interviews. So the point of a CV is to get an interview. Point of the interview is to get the job. But let's focus on the interview part. So start out with yourself, Vicky. What would be like your biggest piece of advice for a software engineer going for an interview at the moment?
I think if you're interviewing, you should maybe have a clear idea as well, potentially, of what you're looking for. As well, because sometimes I will do like the initial hiring manager screen, and people are they say, oh, I don't really mind what to work on, and I'm like, okay, sure, but I feel like you might have an opinion. And what I try to do is I want to make sure that interviews are a two-way street, right? Yes. I want to make sure that we find the best fit possible. And sometimes when someone doesn't, when we don't hire someone, it's not because they haven't passed, all of like the technical stages. It's just they're just not to the shape of a person that I'm specifically looking for the team. So I honestly, I'm not that bothered if someone comes in and they don't know anything about the company, because I feel like it's the whole point, right, of the interview.
Sure.
It would be great if people had like maybe some questions. Prepared, because it's a bit awkward when you end an interview and you're like, oh, any questions? And they're like, okay, none.
It shows they don't care. They haven't done any research. They're probably not that interested if they haven't done research and prepared questions, because if you ask, that's your opportunity to really impress them. I saw that you just raised this much money. What are you planning to do with it? Have you heard about what your competitors done in this area? What do you think? Those questions are the difference between them saying yes to you and saying no to you. It's the way to determine if somebody is a great fit for the company often is by the types of questions that they ask, right? That will show their problem solving skills and everything. And if they just don't have any questions, then that's like an immediate red flag a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind if if their questions aren't specific about the organization. If it's just more about like ways of working, and because like I said, I don't really mind if they haven't done any research, because it's kind of a bit of my job as well to tell them more about the company, and there's only so much you can find out anyway sometimes about different organizations. But it is a bit awkward at the end of the interviews. It's like, okay, well, bye then. It was nice talking to you.
What's your take, Adam, on top interview tips?
I think read the stuff that you're sent.
Yeah.
So like we have done a lot of work as a talent team on like sending over just the right amount of documentation. I used to work with somebody who sent like this 50-page slide thing. Jesus. It was just like people not going to read that. So we've done a lot of work around like what is Currency Cloud, or what are Currency Cloud, Visa, that sort of stuff, and then also what the tech team is or what the product team is, like how just a little one-pager, right, on what they are, and it's really clear when people haven't read those documents, because you kind of they'll ask questions that are covered in those documents. So read the documents. And then the other thing, I think, is just be you, right? There's lots of companies out there. As I said earlier, there's still a war on talent. Be you and go somewhere that the you is appreciated and able to be yourself. You shouldn't go somewhere that you feel that you need to be somebody else. So just be yourself. Be yourself on the interview. And if people like what they hear, see, they're going to be happy. You'll find that you'll work somewhere that you're going to feel like you're at home.
I got exactly the same advice from Helen Murdoch, who is like a recruitment leader. She was on the podcast a while back, and she said, like being your authentic self. It will shine through in the interview. Like people will know, oh, this person's legit. They're genuine, as opposed to you can have those conversations with people and you know that they're holding stuff back, but it feels weird, it feels awkward when you're speaking to them. Okay, what would you say, Artem? What would be your kind of wisdom for people looking to interview right now?
These are two amazing points. Like I actually wanted to mention those. I was first like, I mean I could only expand them. And speaking about like be yourself, like just chill. Like,
Yeah.
That's not like you're going to some exam and like that's just like you're looking for the people you would spend your like next best years with, like that kind of stuff. Like so you've seen these people like each day, and that's nice when you're like being interviewed by your hiring managers, like someone that you'll be working with, like probably not hiring manager, but the lead that you'll be working with.
Yeah.
So just relax and like that. And to expand Vicky's point, ask for insights.
Yeah.
I mean, the interviewer is the same person as you. He's working for the company. There's nothing worse than false expectations, like for both sides. Like either you're overly excited, oh, I'm joining like the dream company, and when you're joining, that's basically not.
Yeah.
Because there are like lots of like there is this dark side of the company.
Nothing's perfect, right? No,
Oh yeah. Or like when you're like not joining the company because you just think that that's kind of like not really good one, but in fact that was the perfect match, and you just didn't have the data, and you didn't have the data because you didn't ask like that.
Yeah.
And for interviewer, that's the same stress, like not stressful, but like kind of like he wants to give everything about the company.
Yes.
Just ask about it.
Yeah, just chill is great advice. It's almost like the opposite of Nike's logo, but it's it's cool. I mean, I mean, absolutely right. An interview is just a conversation between like two or more people. That's all it is, really. And the best case scenario is you get a job. Worst case scenario is you're back exactly where you were before the interview, so you have like nothing to lose. You know, I think that's a good way to wrap up interviews. One thing I wanted to talk about. And actually, you mentioned it, Adam, on a LinkedIn post the other day, is kind of around ED&I, and we can look at this in a couple of different areas. But if we look at ED&I within software development, 90% plus of all engineers are male at the moment, and that obviously shows that we're not doing enough to maximise the amount of talent out there, because there's so many great female coders that are just potentially could do that job but just aren't doing that job, right? And there's a number of different arguments on how we fix this problem. Some people say we need to encourage more women to study STEM subjects at school and kind of get them interested in this early. Other people say we need more female role models in technology, and I think that's a very, very valid point. If you think of tech leaders, you often think of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and Zuck and Elon, and obviously they're all white males. That is being fixed heavily on the BAME side. A lot of leaders at big tech companies are coming from India and other places and China, and that's amazing to see. But we still feel like there's it's not quite right on the ED&I side from a gender perspective at the moment. So be keen to get your opinions on perhaps if there's anything that we could be doing as an industry to help fix this problem and that sort of thing. Appreciate it's a difficult question to ask, right? What do you think, Vicky? You're the female in the room, so what do you think?
Yeah, I think when we talk about diversity and inclusion, I know that we talk about women a lot, but I think it's important to recognize that there's not just women, right? Not just gender, and back to I think what Adam was saying earlier, just making sure that you actually have it's good to have the hiring pipeline, full of diverse candidates and actually widen the pool. But then what you also should do is make sure that, the environment that you're in, is good.
Supportive.
And supportive.
All types of people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think something that possibly, more organizations can do is actually listen to, do more listening on what is needed rather than try to guess. Because I've seen a few organizations, where a lot of men are, kind of carrying out these initiatives, to specifically try to get more women in. But they haven't actually spoken to any women. So they're like, oh, maybe, women will want this or maybe they'll want that. And it's like, well, you can just speak to, them and figure out, what they want to help support them rather than do this guessing. But it's super tricky. Just because in general, right, with just like the history of kind of engineers, it's just a lot more men in general who, you know, are in the industry. And then, like I was saying before, then it's super hard as well to, like, there's probably not going to be like a female senior engineer who wants to join, you know, a place as the first, you know, woman as well. And I know that a lot of organizations are also trying to, you know, diversify. So they're probably going to be much more competitive as well. But yeah, I know that there's been a few initiatives as well, just kind of, you know, starting out with like interns or just apprenticeships as well, trying to get, you know, like offer scholarships as well to people to just learn more. So start, you know, a bit earlier as well. And I think they are also really good. But yeah, just it's super hard.
Yeah, you're right. The internship is a great way. Like there's organisations like Girls Who Code who are working to you know, really help support companies in that respect, and that those types of initiatives, you know, getting people early, getting them to study STEM, getting them you know, to begin with into those careers. That's a really good piece of advice, and I definitely second that.
Yeah, just something to add as well, I think, is just acknowledging that there's a lot of unconscious bias as well, especially in the interviewing stages, because there's been times when I've looked at feedback, and of course there'll be more about people, you know, with people who aren't, you know, white men, and someone might say, oh, you know, they're a bit soft spoken, so I'm just gonna say no to them, you know, or like, oh, they are, you know, they I don't know, they behaved this certain way, and it was clear that they wouldn't have said that, you know, if the candidate looked different as well. So I think what we can do as well is just provide more training as well, but I don't know like what training is best, because that's still something that we're trying to figure out. Like if it's an easy problem, we would have fixed it by now.
It's not an easy problem, right? And what you said there is interesting around unconscious bias and everything. One thing I've been recommending a lot of companies to do is if they feel like they're not getting enough diversity in the team, try taking the names off the CVs before the recruiter passes them to the hiring manager, because if they are getting, you know, names which are not English names and they're rejecting those candidates more commonly than perhaps somebody that's called Luke or Tom or whatever, then take the name off, and then maybe that will change the ratios and that sort of thing. When you're interviewing, that's a bit of a different one, because if you're biased, you're biased, right? But getting a diversity of different interviewers interviewing that one candidate and then maybe voting on a decision is often a better way of doing it, rather than just giving one person the right to veto and that sort of thing. And what do you think, Adam, on ED&I?
Yeah, so it's something that I've tried to try. Like we currently sit as 69% male, 31% female.
Sure.
I started really digging into this about 18 months ago. At that point, we were 70% male, 30% female.
Okay.
Right, and we've done as much as we try, and you know, we've just ended up, we've increased by 1%.
Yeah.
Right. Which is tough. I mean, it's better than decreasing by 1%, but we're going in the right direction. Where I find, or where we find difficulties, Currency Cloud is majority of our headcount, or not majority, but a big chunk of our headcount sits in sales and tech.
Yeah.
And they are the two areas. Tech's tough, sales is actually just as tough.
Yeah.
Like you tend to find that there are less people in like full on sell the product type roles than you would expect. Like it's a really tough market. So in tech though, we have managed to increase our female identifying people in the company by over 100%.
Okay.
Which is wonderful. That means we've gone from 6 to 14.
Yeah.
At the same time, you know, we've got over 100 people that will be male identifying in there. So, you know, we have increased by a lot, like over 100%, like doubled the amount of women. One of the initiatives that we've done in the past, and we're just about to start bringing back, is I don't know how we term it, but it's almost like a working group of females within Currency Cloud. So it's looking at doing like these weekly things. So we're really lucky. Like nearly half our exec team are made up by females. There's lots of females in our sort of extended leadership team. What we want to do is we're encouraging them to have like a safe space to speak, for them to present to people so females to present to the females around what is it that we need, and we certainly are sort of asking people that are female, saying, hey, what do you want? What do you need? Like I was saying earlier, I'm reading a book at the moment that's talking about even the thermostat. Men and women experience heat differently, and the entire world has been developed as like this male. And lots of stuff was done, the industrial stuff was done in the 60s and 70s. Yeah, who went to work? Changed. The men. Women, stay at home and look after the kids. And that's not the world we live in anymore. No. So it's looking at, like, how can we improve things? We're looking at things like job shares. Unfortunately, you lose a lot of women when they have children. Right? How can we then say to people, well, that's cool. We're really flexible. Come and have this flexibility with us. Maybe do part-time jobs if you have to. But, like, you have the skills we need. Come and work with us. Like, how can we be more flexible for you? So it's that level of flexibility, whether it's, anyone that needs that flexibility in working, we want to be able to support that. And with the, we are remote first. Yes. You're at home. It's cool. I have to go and do the school run nearly every day. Yeah. I pick my daughter up from school. It's fine. Go and do it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're not, at least it's great that you're making an effort, that you're trying, because there's so many companies that don't even have that on their agenda at all. They just say, hey, we need more diversity. Okay, what are you doing to get more diverse candidates into the position? And they just don't have an answer for you, right? So like starting on that journey and going back to Vicky's point, asking what's important to you, rather than just kind of arrogantly guessing what it's going to be, that will have a big impact, obviously, on making that successful.
One other thing just to add, I think as current scale, as we migrate more over towards Visa, one of the things that Visa is really strong on is that they just have pay lines, right? And it doesn't matter companies, who you are, where you come from before. This is the pay grade for this position, and there's no. It almost negates the gender pay gap, because there's no way of that happening as well. Sure. Yeah.
We'll get onto the gender pay gap in a second, because that is an interesting point. But just to finish on this segment, Artem, what would be your views on how companies, when they're hiring, can help create more diversity in their engineering cultures?
Again, I do agree with both points, but I feel like there is another side of the problem. Sure. And like the fact that there are like less women in tech. Yeah. Like these days is basically. This is the consequence of tech not being popular among women before. That was like girls were just told that like STEM is like not for you, blah blah blah, all that sort of things. So I feel like that to get rid of this problem, it should be popularized, which is currently being done, right? And then there should be like some mentorship, like I mean like uni, internship, like mentorship program, I mean, it should be normal for girls to go into tech.
Of course. I mean, there's no reason why not. And that goes back to Adam's point about having a panel of people within a business who are kind of thought leaders on a particular area. Having one, for BAME individuals, having one for women in technology within the company, and that can help promote and bring in more people of that type. It's like you said earlier, Vicky, if you have, a team full of white males, that's what you're going to probably attract in the company. But once you start, then you can use those people to really build that and build tribes within the company around that. Okay, so it's a gender pay gap, right? It's like a really, really hot potato, and I despite whatever views you have on it, right? One thing I will say is we did a salary guide survey recently to get data for the upcoming year ahead on what software engineers were being paid, and we in no grey area, pretty black and white. On average, we found women coders were paid about 10% less than the male for doing the same job, which is obviously crazy and bizarre, and a terrible way to attract more diversity if that's what you're trying to do. It kind of you're shooting yourself in the foot, really. But obviously, a lot of people are calling for more transparency with salaries, and I think that's really important. I believe in the States or certain states, it's now become a legal requirement to put salaries on job descriptions. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened in the UK pretty soon. That's quite important. And then, at the same time, a lot of companies are starting to do salary reviews for being the end of the year, see what everyone's being paid. Do we need to change any of that? Are people being paid unfairly? Are we at risk of losing people? You know, it costs a lot more to hire somebody rather than having, you know, and to replace somebody rather than to keep them within the company most of the time. Not just in terms of the salary, but in terms of the training, in terms of the time it takes to get them up and running and that sort of thing. So it makes sense from a commercial perspective to treat people fairly and to pay them fairly, but also from an ethical one and everything else as well, right? But what are your thoughts on kind of the gender pay gap? It's you know, our research found that there was something there. What can we do to fix these sort of things? You posted, Adam, on my LinkedIn about this, so I'm hoping you have an insight to share on it. But what's your view on all this?
I'm trying to remember what noise I made on LinkedIn this time. To be honest with you, I've one of the guys in my team's encouraging everyone to do loads more LinkedIn posts. So I'm trying to put more out there. I think, yeah, like look, there's not a silver bullet for this, right? There's no answer that just kills it off and says, yeah, it's perfect. But there's certain things that you can do. You know, I think regular reviews, regular salary, not just regular salary reviews, but also like making sure that you understand or that the goals are if they're being met and people are achieving at the same level, then there should be no difference. Like, why is there any difference whatsoever in it to start off with? And looking at you know, the data that is in the market already, right? So what are people paid? People. Okay, there's no your male, female. It's what are people paid for this job? You, everyone, we exchange our time for money from a company, right? So it doesn't matter where you're from, who you are. You know, it should all line up. I don't know what else to say on that one, to be honest with you. Like, there's lots of things you can do. We can, you know, we're looking at things at the moment, like, for example, blind CVs. Right, so not just taking the name off, taking everything off.
Company names, sometimes locations,
everything. And just and actually looking at the person on what they can bring to the company. Not, you know, you might have 4 years experience, you might have 8 years experience, but you might be bloody good at 4 years experience, right? Just because you've got 8 years experience doesn't necessarily mean that you warrant that. So it's just looking at at what somebody's bringing to the table as opposed to gender, ethnicity, disability, like what can you bring to the company?
What problem can you solve? You know, what value can you add? I've had some companies recently, I just had to turn one away actually because they wanted to pay a lot less than market average, and their rationale was we can get somebody that's brand new to the country, and that's a great way to lose that person in a few months when they realise that they're not being paid what they're worth. But yeah, what's your view, Vicky, on the pay gap and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's really tricky, especially when you take into consideration, like, you know, like locations as well. If you're fully remote, because it's super hard. If you, and even not even just for countries, right? It's like cities as well. But I think all of this stems from just like kind of the negotiation side, because something I've heard a lot is, women don't tend to, you know, negotiate, you know, as much as men, and that's why they don't get as much. And it's like, but as the organization, I think it's part of your responsibility to make sure that, you know, that this doesn't affect the salaries. And I know that there's a lot of companies out there that have salary bands as well, but that is also really difficult because like with the salary bands, they can end up being like super wide, or then if they're overlapping as well, then it's super tricky. But yeah, honestly, I'm not a huge fan of negotiation. I have had a lot of friends, you know, who are women, and they're like, I'm negotiating with a company. Like, how do I do this? And I'm like, oh my God, don't even ask me, because I'm really terrible as well. Like personally, like I would, because it's stressful as well, right? Negotiating as well, because you really want to work somewhere, but then at the same time, it's like you want to make sure you're not, you know, being taken advantage of. So I know a lot of companies have actually taken the negotiation, you know, side off and just saying this is what we are going to offer you, and it's the same, you know, for everyone. But yeah, I don't know, it's super hard. I don't know if I have any kind of helpful suggestions.
Well, negotiating, that is a helpful suggestion to me, because if a company is negotiating every salary and trying to get it lower and lower, you're not going to keep that person for very long, because they know, like, good software developers, they get messages on LinkedIn all the time. They get emails all the time, get calls all the time. And in the messages, it tells the employee what their competitors are offering. So if you know that you're being underpaid and that's consistently happening, then the negotiation, you're shooting yourself in the own foot, because in a few months, that person might leave. And obviously, it's not just about money. Obviously, it's about the culture and everything else. But if you've got a culture of negotiating people and paying them the least amount possible, then that probably bleeds into other areas of the culture as well, if that makes sense. What would your view, Artem, be on this really complicated topic?
That's probably the trickiest one.
Yeah, man.
I first thought that like transparent bans is kind of like the solution, but I feel like at the same time it may like harm the companies, because effectively like there is a nice guy who is like solving the problems, but obviously he is not matching like some criteria for passing to the next band. And like, I mean, he's good, but it's very hard to like know all the parameters that you may value, so that to like pay more to this particular person, and this person will leave because like someone else will propose him the money he's worth. And like that's it. I mean, like honestly, don't have any opinion. I mean, like it might be the case that like if the band system is flexible enough to cover the like the majority of points, it might work.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, most big companies, I find, do some kind of banding structure at the moment. However, most of them get it wrong, because it's exactly what you said. It's just like, it's like a 50k band on a job, for example, or it's the complete opposite. It's like a weird number. It's like, we'll offer 52,000 and £15 or something going up, and it's just some like random number. And then if somebody wants 55k, and for the sake of a couple of grand, oftentimes they won't get the person that they need. So there's no easy solution, is there to that problem? But I think we've all shared a couple of ideas that can help at least get the ball rolling in the right direction. And for those listening that are interested in seeing if you're being paid what you're worth, then check out our salary guide. It's free. Just go to welovealpha.com. The link's in the description, and you can get access to that. No need to pop in an email or a credit card or anything. You can just download it for free. Okay, cool. Well, look, thank you so much for all coming on. It was really good to get your perspectives, your opinions, your point of view into what's happening in this area. So thank you very much, and hopefully we can get you back on in the future. For the viewers, really, really thank you for your time. If you made it to the end, appreciate you listening. Make sure that you're followed, subscribe, Spotify, YouTube, etc., if you're not already. And we will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Imagine if you were able to hire the next Elon Musk. Or if you got a job at Facebook, back when it was just a startup. Well, these people and these opportunities, they are still out there, and we have access to them. Access to all of them. At Alpha Technology, we specialise in software development recruitment across London and the UK. From React to Java to C# and more. We represent the best front-end, back-end, and full-stack engineers on the market. This includes top developers from Meta, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, and more. Our clients operate across AI, blockchain, VR, AR, fintech, edtech, health tech, and more. From startups to global enterprises and everything in between. But Alpha isn't just a recruitment agency. We are also a tech community. We host podcasts, run meetup events, and lead ED&I initiatives, supporting women in technology, BAME individuals, and the Tech for Good ecosystem. So, if you're a company looking to hire software engineers, or if you're a developer open to new opportunities yourself, then we are here to help. Alpha Technology. Recruiting for the future.